What's going on there, YouTube? Welcome back to another comic book video. Okay, so it's time for us to go ahead and continue our coverage over, well, Heroes Return. And just in case we have anybody just joining our coverage over Marvel Comics to understand what Heroes Return was all about, let me briefly explain, where Heroes Return came from, because it came out of the idea of Heroes Reborn. You see, when it came to Marvel Comics in the late 1990s, they had this idea known as Heroes Reborn. And when it came to Heroes Reborn, it was Marvel's answers for their struggles in the late 1990s when it came to some of their properties, like Iron Man or the Avengers, Fantastic Four. Now, technically not Captain America, but unfortunately, he was also thrown into that deal as well. And so when it came to Marvel Comics, their main goal was to bring back old creators to kind of give those characters a fresh start, but in a brand new reality over there, to kind of see those fans come back into Marvel Comics to see what these old creators going to do when it comes to their favorite characters. Now, unfortunately, that whole idea only lasted for 1 year. And so after Heroes Reborn, we got Heroes Reborn: The Return, a 4-part miniseries that brought those heroes back into the main Marvel universe. And so we're now in the era better known as Heroes Return in the late 1990s, where you had all these different creative teams come together to kind of work on the new launching points with all these new books coming up left and right. The Avengers, Fantastic Four, Thor, and the list goes on and on. Like, for example, when it came to the Fantastic Four, you had Scott Lobdell and also Alan Davis come together to work on this brand new launching point for the Fantastic Four in the Heroes Return era. And matter of fact, when it came to our characters going into that other reality, for the public in the main Marvel universe, they truly did miss their heroes a lot. It really did affect them, but not just the public, but also the different super villains that kind of got left behind the main Marvel universe as those heroes went into the Heroes Reborn reality. Like, for example, Mole Man. Now, we saw a Mole Man in the Heroes Reborn reality, but that was Franklin Richards kind of going out of his way to create a version of Mole Man in that reality. But the 616 Mole Man, he's now getting word about the idea of the return of the Fantastic Four. And so when it came to his plans to invade the surface world, he now wants to wait a tad bit, because now he hears his old enemies have came back into the picture again. But also he wants to make sure that he is able to bring them down. Now, when it came to Marvel Comics around this time, you had another team pop up when our heroes were in the Heroes Reborn reality, better known as the Thunderbolts. Now, the Thunderbolts were kind of like an answer to, hey, with the Avengers being gone, the Fantastic Four being gone, then what superhero team out there will go out of their way to, supposedly protect the public? Here came the Thunderbolts, which honestly was a cool idea. But the thing was, the Thunderbolts had moved into the old base of the Fantastic Four. And so unfortunately for our heroes, they couldn't go back home, right? And so you had the rest of the team find out that for Reed Richards, what he did was he built a base out there in Antarctica. So right now for our heroes, currently, they're located in Antarctica for the time being. Now, we do have to switch over to Paris, and when we do, we pick up with a group of protesters who are right now very upset about the idea that you have this American company known as DRC trying to build their new building in Paris on sacred grounds. Now, when it comes to the protesters, the leader of the group is a young girl known as Yvette. Now, when it comes to Yvette, she plays a major role in this storyline, but you did have the protesters be confronted by a guy known as Aaron Starr. Now, these names are not really important when it comes to the history of Marvel Comics, because out of this storyline, we're not really going to see these characters that much more. But when it comes to Aaron, what he wants to do is show the protesters what his company is truthfully doing here. And so we do learn here that for his for his company, what they have been doing lately is trying to break into this mystic door they found underground. Now, of course, at first, for the protesters, including Yvette, she's very intrigued about the whole idea of this mystic door that was just underground this entire time. But while you do have, Aaron Starr, the person in charge of the site here, when he does show the protesters what they're currently doing, she realized that they're trying to break open the door with some type of laser. So, of course, you do have Yvette try to stop them, except with their kicking the laser, of course, it makes things a whole lot worse because then the door does open up. But, of course, it's now releasing some kind of energy. But this also kind of leads us back over to the Fantastic Four. And when we do, we pick up with Ben Grimm on the grill. Now, with Ben Grimm being on the grill, it's Ben now expressing how he truly feels about the idea of now being back in the main Marvel universe, but also the fact that, how he felt with the idea of knowing that even though he was in this different reality, the Heroes Reborn reality, he still came out as some kind of rock monster. Now, technically, his godson or nephew, Franklin Richards, was the reason why he did turn into a rock monster. But at the same time, though, he's a child who just created a reality out of nowhere. Now, you have Susan be that person in Ben's corner, kind of make him feel a tad bit better. But of course, it really shows that for Ben Grimm, he kind of hates the idea that no matter what, when it comes to his life outcome, he will always end up as some kind of rock monster. Now, we do switch over to Franklin, Reed, and Johnny as they're currently working on one of the many vehicles the Fantastic Four has. Now, while they're working on the vehicle, you didn't have Johnny kind of express that he hates the idea of Reed not really talking to the other members of the Fantastic Four, because for the Fantastic Four, they didn't know that Reed had built this base in Antarctica. And also, there has been a few other things in the past that happened where Reed did not tell the different members of the Fantastic Four what he has done or what he's currently working on. And so for Johnny, it's him telling Reed, you should open up more. Now, Franklin is there as well. And you have Franklin asking all these different questions about the different devices that Reed has made inside this place. And one of those devices is currently being used as a way to watch over the barrier between dimensions around the main Marvel universe. Because when it came to Reed Richards and the whole idea of the pocket dimension they were in, the Heroes Reborn dimension, you have Reed kind of use this as a way to track other dimensions that could possibly break down that barrier. And the problem is that device, it goes off, which means a barrier has been broken. Now, as we do switch back over to the protesters, we do learn that the energy that was hitting them was slowly turning them into creatures called the Ruin. Now, the Ruin are a race of people who were locked away behind that mystic door many, many years ago. And of course, with the door now being open, they're now being able to come back into, this reality, this dimension. And apparently their goal right now is to turn the earth into what their dimension was before they got locked away. Now, when it comes to Yvette, they kind of felt like she'll be perfect to become their agent. And the reason why, because her hatred for the idea of technology advancing so far into the world that she wanted to see technology stopped, that they felt like they could use her as a way to help them stay tethered to this dimension, but to also help them take over this dimension as well before technology is able to advance so far. Now, you do have Reed and Susan head over to Paris. Now, when they had arrived in Paris, they made sure to disguise themselves. And the reason why, because the idea of the Fantastic Four being there could really upset the public. Not in a way where they get angry, but make them panic. And so for Reed and Sue, they want to make sure they're able to collect information before they got rid of their disguises, which they did. Now, for Reed and Sue, they go underground. and they do find the doorway. But it's also Reed realizing that Paris is slowly being changed into, well, something else, well, a different dimension, like the ruin wanted to do. And so for Reed and Susan, their main goal is to figure out how to close that barrier, except they're then confronted by the enemies. Now, for Johnny and also Ben, they're also there as well, just on the sideline. But for Johnny and Ben, really more Johnny, you have Johnny run into a supermodel. So, of course, that's a good old Johnny Luck there. And so you have Johnny Storm being able to spend some time with that supermodel. Now, for Ben Grimm, you have been being confronted by a bunch of children, and really, this is a callback to the early days of Fantastic Four, where you have Ben Grimm say, he comes from Yancey Street over in New York. And so out here in Paris, there is a Yancey Street. But with a Yancey Street being out here, you do have Ben Grimm be, attacked by a bunch of small kids. But again, it's just a callback to the good old days of the Fantastic Four. But this leads into our heroes all coming together because you do have Reed shoot up the flare. So with the flare being shot up, Johnny and Ben both know, like, okay, we gotta go because the rest of the team needs our help. And so you do have Johnny and also Ben get over there to help out Reed and Susan. Now, in the middle of the battle between our two sides here, you do have Ben run into Yvette. And when he does, at first, he believes that she is some innocent person because she looks normal, unlike the rest of the creatures in the area. But you do have Yvette show that with the powers that she had gained from the ruined, you now have Ben Grimm be sent flying back in the other direction as soon as she punches him one single time. Now, for Reed Richards, he kind of realized what's going on here. When it comes to the ruin, they're using this fight right now as a distraction because as long as our heroes are fighting, that gives the portal more time to begin the process of slowly changing Paris and the rest of the world into this other dimension. Now, with that being said, you also have Yvette find out that the reason why they made her their agent is because they're going to use her as a sacrifice to kind of help them finish the process off when it comes to turning Paris and the rest of the world into their dimension. And so once you have Yvette realize what's happening, it's her now trying to reach out to her friends who had changed into the different creatures of the ruined. Now, this situation does kind of wrap up very quickly. And the reason why, because you do have Reed realize that they need to find a way to just close that barrier. Once that barrier is closed, then everything should go back to normal. So you have Susan try at first. It does not work. You have Johnny also try as well. Like I said earlier, it doesn't work. And so for our heroes, they're kind of wondering what can they do. But for Ben Grimm, he comes in at the very last second to save the day because this man got a huge glass steel pyramid that's in Paris, and he used that item as a way to officially close off the barrier. With the barrier being closed, everything goes back to normal. And so the book kind of ends on the note where you do have our heroes leave. And so with our heroes now being back in this heroes return era, it's really more Marvel saying, okay, we brought everyone's heroes back into the main Marvel universe. It's now our goal to kind of get Fantastic Four back to their old ways. The good old Jack Kirby, Stan Lee days, or even John Byrne days, possibly. Now, for me personally, I didn't really hate Jim Lee's Fantastic Four. I kind of found his run on Fantastic Four pretty interesting. The stories did get a little, all over the place, but at the same time, it wasn't really that bad. But either way, it does seem like it's Marvel saying, let's try to bring things back to somewhat normal again. And so with that being said, guys, please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, see y'all next time. Later.